Welcome to Pipe Dream Politics, a series where we will investigate and scrutinize the solutions at hand for fixing the dumpster fire that is American politics, and distinguish the real options from the purely pipe dreams. So, my fellow filthy sinners, let me guess, you clicked on this video because you like third parties and can't wait to see me make an argument you can tear apart in the comments? Well, at least give me some breathing room before calling me a fed and following it with your half-thought-out cold takedown blow, because I will respond and make you look like more of a joke than, well, this. Let me assure you that this video isn't an attack on you for supporting the non-establishment candidate or whatever. To the contrary, I find it noble. However, the issue is when the odds are stacked against your favor so heavily, so fundamentally, that any attempt to obtain power in that specific fashion is a waste of talent and effort that could be making real change if used efficiently. This again is no slight to you, O sensitive one. It is a major flaw of the system in which our political climate operates. Or maybe it's working exactly as malevolently as it should, depending on who you ask. Either way, it's the one we are stuck with, and no amount of votes, not 3 million, not 300 million, will give any third-party presidential candidate a real shot at success with the hostile government. From local to federal, officials are 95% Democrats or Republicans that can and will block anything even slightly too radical for them. These two parties have headlocked our republic and created a system where power is only distributed to the representatives who will fall in line within the rigid guidelines of red-blue party politics dictated by each organization's elite. These guidelines referred to are the standards set in place by the heads and senior members of the major parties, whether they be Pelosi, McConnell, Trump, Biden, you name it. So even when, once in a blue, or red, moon, when a more ideologically driven candidate is elected, their goals are sure to be watered down by the rest of the elected officials who make up said party falling in line. So most of you, whether you are members of the Democrats, Republicans, Greens, Libertarians, People's Party,
Are you serious?
and many, many more, you can unite in the comments to tell me why I should chuck my brain into a wood chipper. Let me start this off by giving a little context that will be important to remember throughout this video. I want to be wrong. I love the idea of third parties winning. That would be great for our democracy. But let me shoot straight with you, Chief. It's not gonna happen in these here United States of America. I believed in third-party success as a possibility for most of my politically conscious life and still vehemently believe in their ideals. However, over the course of the last few years, I have realized that long-term success introduced through a given third party's platform is entirely unattainable. I keep saying third party this and third party that. Well, I should clarify exactly what I mean when I say it. To keep it simple, it's any political party in the US besides the red or blue ends of the business party. They're also referred to as the minor parties, but it's really just that simple. So, having started on the ever so positive note of shitting on both the duopoly and the supposed remaining options, why am I even making this video, you might ask? Is it just to tell you there's nothing you can do and just eat saltines and wait to die? No, there are actually very realistic solutions that can save America from stagnation, or perhaps something much, much worse. It's crucial, though, that we rid the system of the scum that rely on the ever-squeezed working class to take a hit for their failure, while at the same time counting on their vote every single election cycle. Before diving into the meat of the argument and solution, we do need a bit of historical context, as being misled on issues such as this can be easy when conducting your own late-night stoned surface-level research. So let's ask the all-important question. How the fuck did we get here in the first place in this supposedly free country? Where did my late-night stoned surface-level research lead us? Well, in short, we have always been here in one form or another. The founding of our republic and later signing of the Constitution set in place a bicameral legislative body that typically results in a sort of balancing act between each conservative and supposedly liberal political organizations with ever-altering names. The seniority and establishment members of each of the major parties will work against radicals on both ends if it supports their goal of solidifying the status quo. This is in an effort, of course, to clear a path so that they may easily pursue their personal goals pertaining to financial advancement and career potential. But how do they maintain this in a system supposedly set up to give the people power? How is our government constantly in the grip of bloodthirsty oligarchs, and what process gives them the power to do whatever they please regardless of popular support? The age-old American tradition of feeling stuck between choosing an old rich crusty politician and, well, an old rich crusty politician, to make decisions that will often affect their day-to-day lives for better, or more often than not, worse. When faced with this option of
A giant douche and a turd sandwich.
you may stop and ask, hey wait, this is a free country. What are my other options? They can't really expect us to choose between
A giant douche and a turd sandwich.
There used to be different parties. Why aren't there now? So when looking back, you just have to remember one important thing. Don't judge a book by its cover, as just because a party has a different name and logo doesn't mean it or the system in which it operated are in any way fundamentally different to the way things are today. There are quite a few different names when looking at the parties of presidents of the past, but remember, nothing is truly different when the same root ideals uphold the same system in the end of the day. Only 12 times in our history has a third party even won 5% of the vote. 5%! The only difference now is greater access to voting rights, which is fantastic, but it will never become a true solution until the marginalized and disenfranchised of this country are able to get real representation for them and their needs. Or, until their votes actually mean something. And the sad thing is, that's just a symptom of the representative democracy and the shit baggage like the filibuster or the electoral college it drags along with it that steals our rights. In fact, virtually nothing is different since the election of 1792. A two-party dominant system has been in effect, with the same parties ever so slowly changing names over time into what they are today.
If I have to choose between a douche and a turd, I just don't see the point.
Call it what you want, but it's the same two-headed monster that has just been shedding its skin and adapting to the times as we move from election to election, as people and politicians die, but these parties don't. Hell, the two-party system is so fluid when it comes to names that the two main ones we know today used to have the same name, and then even swap names and positions in the past. The Republicans used to be the Liberal Party, for God's sake, while the Democrats were highly conservative, unlike just the regular amount of conservative that they tend to be today, and kinda busy seceding from the Union. Glad to see that's definitely not gonna happen again. So, knowing that the two parties as we currently have them stand for nothing and will take us nowhere, the obvious logical line leads all of us unhappy voters to the conclusion of third parties. I mean, are they not the direct response to the American people crying out, there must be something else out there? After all, if there are only two parties and we can't do anything about them locking in their appointed candidates to serve as president, and your only job as a voter is to decide between the two semi-similar positioned individuals representing said parties, does voting even matter?
Did you just say that voting is ridiculous?
Not to mention every third option that's allowed to compete never even comes close to actual power when the Electoral College will choose whoever they want at the end of the day regardless of the popular vote. At that point, is it not just a toss-up? You'd be right to think all of those things, actually, but that's also what those wanting to maintain the shitty status quo want you to think, and that's never something you want to think. If you put your faith in a third-party candidate, you have essentially, don't get mad at me, this is their view, taken yourself out of the race, as if you haven't voted at all. You may think that's stupid and say, well, the problem is people like me going doomer on the possibility of a minor candidate gaining the traction and support needed for success on the biggest stages. And to that I say, your candidate is being fed into a system they were not meant to fit into, and will never be able to thrive in. You're essentially feeding them into a paper shredder when you consider the massive opposition that will stand in their way once elected. The duopoly knows even executive success for a third party will not mean anything when the legislative body will stand against them and any executive orders will be overturned by the next president before they can have any real long-term effect. My argument is stupid, you say. Okay, well, fair enough. How about we take it from the assholes who set up the whole damn system to begin with? The first quote is that of Thomas Jefferson regarding his opinion of the people having a direct say in their government's running. Quote, "A democracy is nothing but mob rule where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49, end quote. If you're too dented in the head to figure out why that's bad, all you have to do is compare his framing of democracy to any other system. Let's use his argument to frame monarchy, for instance. Well, in that sense, monarchy could be seen as the 0.001% taking the rights of the other 99.999%. Or how about aristocracy? The 0.01% taking the rights of the 99.99%. No matter what system you compare this against, even with the most disingenuous framing, democracy still comes out with the most rights for the most citizens, best distributing the power. What's that, you say? Thomas Jefferson's opinions aren't relevant to the subject. Well, I guess that's fair. I mean, he was only a founding father and author of the Declaration of Independence, but there was more than one founding father. How about James Madison, for instance? He did some writing. In fact, you may have heard of some of his work. The Constitution, for instance, if you've heard of it. But anyways, he also wrote, open quote, "Democracy is the most vile form of government," end quote. I don't really need to explain why that one didn't age so well, but my point is, these are not the beliefs of men who wanted to distribute the governing power equally amongst the people, rather that of those ensuring that they and their rich buddies could keep a majority of control on the system while painting a thin veneer of popular control to the people. In reality, all those who ever participated in America's electoral system are the victims of an apparatus created only to give the people a fake sense of power, while the real power lies with prominent families and their business partners. Democrats, Republicans, does it even matter? This buddy-buddy civility politics bullshit has led organizations supposed to be dedicated to their ideals as two sides of the same coin. A coin that has always maintained a stranglehold on the selection process concerning who actually has a say in how their government is run. Now, before you call me a Fed again, ask yourself this. Do you think I like the fact that the reality we're born into is set up to make sure third parties have no real chance? Do you think I love the fact that the few options left involve us subverting the duopoly from within? Fuck no. Very bad. Very, very bad. But is it the reality we have to deal with for now? Yeah, because the puppet masters controlling each party will not give up this sweet deal they have locked in as the cement that holds our republic together unless at the barrel of a rifle. And I know damn well you millennial zoomer shits are far too weak and or afraid to go full Lenin mode. And before we go any further, let's touch on that seemingly obvious solution I have danced around, revolution, and why it's entirely unviable for two main reasons if we want to see any real change anytime soon. The first reason is a revolution means for a period of time making a lot of people's lives a lot worse during the transition to whatever new system would result, and considering most Americans will try to secede if faced with even just higher gas prices, good luck on trying to convince them to sacrifice most of their comforts and luxury so you can take a shot at something that maybe might work out better in the end. Instead of leading the people en masse on some grand conquest of liberation, the second the modern American's life gets worse, you will be blamed and they will jump into the arms of the first group of people offering them their recently lost comforts, likely being the neoliberal scum who have a stranglehold on our governing body already. And the second reason is revolution means war, and 99.9% of the politically engaged people I talk to are far too larpy and concerned for their own well-being at the end of the day to pick up a gun and take to the streets, instead preferring just to use Twitter as their means of conquest, where no real change in the slightest bit will ever result from their endless threads about duopoly bad, almost like they're screaming into the void. So to everyone out there calling for unrealistic solutions like revolution or general strike, just know the numbers are nowhere near where you would need them to be successful for that. How about you go play cannon fodder before offering to sacrifice everyone else because, like I said, 99.9% of you wouldn't dare engage in a battle beyond the terrain of the internet, and when you refuse to do anything but that, it doesn't matter how many times you denounce the two-party system in your tweets, you look like more of a do-nothing than the Democrats, because you know the problem, but refuse to live up to your ideals and do anything beyond it but meme to the void. Funny enough, that may have seemed targeted at the ML types, but the LARP issue is 1000% visible across the spectrum when you have plenty more right-wing radicals marching around their bedroom with their AR proclaiming it the new capital of the Fourth Reich. And when they take it any further than that, it just gets even more LARPy and embarrassing. So let me get this straight. The major parties are run by self-interested assholes, and if revolution is about as realistic as a wet dream, what the actual fuck is left on the table for regular people who want change, but are also interested in not prematurely dying in a hail of lead? Do you remember earlier how I mentioned so gleefully that we are doomed to the same two-party system our grandparents and their grandparents were born in and died under? Well, this is actually something that we, the people, the masses, I say, can use to our favor even in this rigged, constitutional republic fake democracy we currently chill within. How, you might ask, is this even remotely possible? Well, I'm glad you did, because the most important part about the duopoly I mentioned is that they are ever-changing. The parties themselves are malleable and constantly developing as the American Overton window shifts. This being a result of the minuscule adoration politicians actually do have to their support base. Let me tell you something. The label means nothing if the Republicans are playing Rhino and the supposed Democrats are blocking their own public infrastructure bills and appointing anti-choice candidates to lifetime positions. They are the problem. Those officials need to be challenged from within because the fat that continues to stagnate our major parties' claimed goals is in the form of self-interested, greedy assholes, and that fat needs to be trimmed. So remember, you can run a real progressive like Bernie for president and even win, but you'll still lack the inter-party support needed to pass anything beyond executive orders. And that's not only going to hurt your candidate going forward, but other ideological candidates who try to run because when they're the supposed fix to the issue and nothing ends up getting done, whether it's their fault or not, the average voter isn't going to care and they're just going to disregard candidates of their type in the future as nothing but a gimmick of false hope. So instead of taking a stab with a third-party candidate or even an ideologue painted red or blue, we need to build inter-party support from the ground up so that when it comes time to run a more atypical Democrat or Republican, their voters don't have to be disappointed by an administration that isn't able to make any meaningful change. You may be saying, well, Adam, you just mentioned Bernie, and that's what he did. He painted himself blue, he aligned himself with the duopolists, and where did it get him? And to that I say, have you been listening? And if not, have you at least been trying to think critically? No? Okay, good, I didn't expect it, but this is the problem that the solution from earlier would prevent going forward. Bernie's downfall didn't come from the Republicans, it came from within his own party, even when he garnered more support in many cases than the establishment candidates they were running like Hillary or Biden. But that doesn't matter. This isn't a real democracy, remember? This is a constitutional republic. So simply having popular support amongst the regular people doesn't mean shit when it comes down to it. This was a result of not having enough like-minded progressives within the party to support Bernie's nomination when it came time to facing him off against the traditional senior party member. You may have heard the phrase, politics is a game of popularity, on more than one occasion. However, I think this is only a half-truth, as yes, popularity matters, but true political success is a game of connections and influence, neither of which Bernie Sanders had within the Democratic Party since joining it a year prior to his first presidential run under the banner, after being a lifelong independent, all but guaranteed any longtime party member who primaried him would win the final nomination, regardless of popular support amongst the average Americans. I've gone in long and hard on the Democrats, deservingly so. However, this is an issue across the aisle, as I would be remiss if I neglected to mention the situation that has taken place within the Republican Party over the last, let's say, 6 years or so. Yes, I'm sure you've guessed by now, but I'm referring to Donald Trump, a supposedly non-political candidate initially, who would go on to prove to us time and time again that he was just another puppet of the ruling class, just this time hidden in plain sight instead of some pretend working-class husk. Soon after announcing his political ambitions to the public, Trump began embracing a faux, anti-establishment aesthetic similar to that of Tucker Carlson, having no qualms hurting the working class at first opportunity if it meant lining his own pockets. This fake populism deceived many non-typical right-wing voters, and voters in general, making them believe Trump was some breath of fresh air, but that really couldn't have been further from the truth, could it? I mean, how stupid is it when you really stop and think about it, though? We always complain of rich, detached politicians who are old as fuck, destroying the country, and Trump, the self-proclaimed billionaire and 6-time bankruptee, was gonna give us all the fresh fucking air we needed? I know damn well most of y'all would be living in the fucking rain drain if you went even bankrupt once, much less twice, but you would never even have the opportunity to go bankrupt 6 times. I mean, that man does not understand for 1 second the struggles of an average American. And anyone who tells you otherwise has a very warped perception of money and how it works. Or is just plain bad faith, there's always that too. And yes, he most definitely did deceive anyone who thought he cared about you or any of your values or weird conspiracy theories for that matter. Because in absolutely no fucking world is someone born into immense wealth, who's allowed to fail as many times as they want on massive scales, going to be a wholesome representation of a leader who's interested in your beliefs and concerns. He's a lobbyist turned politician. Essentially, he's Dick Cheney minus the murder, making up for it in sexual crimes. From the moment he took office, he was a shill to his own personal interests, along with those of his friends and vacation buddies, let's call them. It's truly astounding to me what people will overlook even when concerning the most egregious crimes according to their own life codes and faith. Strongly Christian moral individuals in many cases will jump through an unfathomable amount of hoops to overlook his obvious lack of care for Christianity or upholding the morals in which his evangelical voting base subscribes to. It's disgusting. He treats them like they're stupid, or like he's almost daring them to turn against him with his actions in so many ways, hoping they would laugh it off and disregard his moral shortcomings as he was clearly trying to pose as a man of strong conviction. I go so hard on him specifically because he's nothing but a subversive agent, a wolf in sheep's clothing who wants nothing but to distract from the true issues facing most Americans. He can yell about problems non-stop, but where are his solutions that haven't already been proven failures by the neoliberals before him? I'll sum up Trump by saying this: he's about as anti-establishment and real American as Admiral General Aladdin.
I am very proud to be an American. I am America's #1 douche.
The only viable road to sustainable power is to build supportive environments within our own party so that when we finally get someone besides
A giant douche and a turd sandwich.
in office, their platforms won't be immediately shot down by the establishment ends of the business party duopoly, call it whatever the fuck you want, I don't care. Let me paint a quick analogy for you to better exemplify what I'm getting at. If I drop your out-of-shape ass right now in the Olympics to compete in the 100-meter dash, how are you gonna do? Let me give you a hint. You're going to embarrass not only yourself, nor your parents, but your entire fucking lineage, no doubt, on international television. But would you do any better if you had years to train and get the proper nutrition typically seen amongst world-class sprinters? Yeah, you definitely would. I mean, you'd still probably lose horrifically, but you'd do a hell of a lot better than you just did untrained. Now, for all you
You're Simple Simon. Sup, Simple Simon?
out there, this analogy is comparing the muscle building and athletic knowledge required of Olympic champions to the party lining and proper candidate selection that needs to take place for a candidate from a given party to not only win nomination or the election, but to actually be successful after being elected. Imagine, if you will, President Bernie in 2016 or 2020. Do you seriously think with how little Biden the centrist, at best, has been able to push through even while sucking more dick to reach across the aisle than Jesse Lee Peterson, that someone with a much more progressive platform would be able to make real change when faced with a primarily oppositional legislative body? I mean, fuck man, look even recently at Biden's policy that has been held up by even one or two members within his own party whose ideals ended up being more akin to the right despite the label they use. Now, the reason I'm not going to even expand on the Republican end of that issue is because y'all already have a whole ass expanded lore and universe around the concept already. The fact that Rhino to y'all does not even conjure up images of a horned creature tells me I don't need to go into detail on this one. Tired of centrist Democrats, or centocrats as I call them, turning every isolated example of an actual progressive into just another party shill? Make sure if a Democrat is being elected in your local area, they're not going to drop the ball every time they have the opportunity to truly improve the lives of their voters. Tired of rhinos keeping your party from pushing for the actual and overt platform you want? Make sure your local candidates share your views about the nature of the party and the issues that cause so much disaffection between the voters and their elected officials. The key for both sides is local, 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 and then you work your way up from there because that's how we turn the minority sects within a party into the most powerful blocks of it. In summary, the idea of throwing the whole system away because it doesn't work properly is great and all, but let's be honest, we're all way too big of pussies to do anything that would directly lead towards that, and in some ways, it's for the best, considering a lot of people would die during the transitionary period that takes place. And that's not even considering that your side probably won't even win in the end anyway, and even if they did, how would you avoid the same issues post-revolution that plague the estranged relationship between voters and their elected officials today just manifesting themselves in different forms? So the best thing you could possibly do is locally organize and engage, participate in your local and state elections, join orgs like the DSA, reach out to your local politicians, trust me you can force a response out of them one way or another, or even take action at your place of work in organizing a labor union if you're on the left. Or if you're on the right, well how about you just sit this part out because y'all keep missing the point on that one. But I digress. The American electoral system is set up to only function with two parties and there is nothing we can do to change that overnight. Fundamental change at the deepest rooted levels is unquestionably needed, but there has to be a realistic path to get there. Line the party with those who will support the legislation of your preferred president so if they do end up getting elected, it doesn't end up like,
Excuse me.